Clay shooters, it's that time again.
These guys aren't just anybody. They're good.
It's time for the Dead Pair Podcast with Jason Rambo.
Does your brain hear what your mouth is saying?
And Sean Alley.
He's large and in charge.
Here to bring you all things sporting clays, from the ins and outs, tips and tricks, news and gossip from pro shooters, service and industry specialists, coaches, clubs, and more.
Often imitated, never duplicated.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only...
Welcome, everyone, to the Dead Pair Podcast.
Yeah, the Dead Pair Podcast, energized by KO Ammo, Gameboard US. What's up, Mr. Large and Ugly in Charge?
I'm ready to move somewhere warmer. I'm tired of this crap.
Well, as everybody's hearing this...
Yeah, the Caribbean Cup's going on, right?
Caribbean Club down at Vero Beach is going on.
Yep. Should be really nice down there.
Yes, wish I was there.
Mm-hmm.
But, hey, next week's the Jack Links Cup, so...
Yep, and we will be there for that.
We will be there for that. So
just got to suffer through a little while longer, Jason.
Yes. Are you ready for the profit to be on?
Yeah, they don't get much bigger than this, do they?
No.
So
no. When it comes to sporting clays in the United States, if you don't know the name Anthony Matarese Jr., you've been living under a rock.
Big rock.
So, yeah. Now this I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, and this is the first time we've had Anthony on by himself, other than questions for the coaches. The last time we had him on with the...
no, he's never even been on for that.
Well, the Titans debate with David.
The Titans debate,
yeah. He was on with David and him, and but this is, his time and his time alone, his time to shine.
Yeah, we got some good questions for him, too. I hope he's in the mood to gab, because just like... Well, should I go ahead and tell the funny story about the Nationals?
Sure, go ahead.
So Sean and I went to the first-time attendee luncheon up on the hill at the house, and lo and behold, Anthony sat across the table from us, and he was talking. He had stopped to take a bite of his sandwich or something, and Sean looked at me and said, "Well, you about ready to go?" And I'm like, "As long as that man's talking, I'm not moving." So, the guy's just, every word that comes out of his mouth is just pure gold.
Yeah, he's a vault of knowledge of the sport.
For sure. So, hey, let's get to Anthony. We got some segments lined up for you guys afterwards. Make sure you stick around from them. We've got some really cool segments lined up too. So, without further ado, let's get Anthony Matarese on the phone.
Right on. All right, joining us, the one, the only, Anthony Matarese Jr. Anthony, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty well.
How's things been treating you up there north?
Good. I can't complain. Winter kind of kicked in the last couple of weeks. It's been a little bit of snow and some cold days, but it is January, so
yeah, for us,
that's kind of what we'd expect.
Yeah, for us that live up in the northern hemisphere, this is what we got to deal with through these months. So it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, Anthony, we never really got a chance to dive into questions specific to you when we had you and David on for the Titans debate. So we kind of wanted to gear some of the questions to you specifically. To understand, you've been holding some target setting classes and some mental training seminars. Can you tell us a little bit about those and what someone attending can expect from one of those classes?
Yeah, so I'll start with my target setting class. My target setting class is a 2-day class. I generally host it one time per year. Sometimes a couple of years I've done it twice in the year, but generally once per year. And I host it generally at the end of the season, say like December. We have a tournament in December, and I always host it right the Monday and Tuesday following that tournament, because I've got a full course that we just set up and for the tournament as an example, and we do a 50-bird 5-stand, a 50-bird FITASC. So I've kind of got all that out there to get out there with the guys in the field and look at that stuff as an example. So it's a 2-day class. It's Monday and a Tuesday. The class is taught from the perspective of, if you're going to be an actual real target setter in some capacity, whether it's set targets at a local club, help your buddy set targets for a sportsman's club or like a nonprofit club, or set targets at a big tournament. It's from the perspective of for a target setter. So the question I always get is, what if I'm not really a target setter, but I would like to know more about it? Should I take the class? My answer is always the same. You're going to learn things that you don't necessarily need if you're just taking it from this perspective of a shooter. But it's not, you're going to learn more than you need to know. Right. So you'll learn a lot about reading targets and understanding, et cetera, but it's not a target reading class. It's a target setting class and understanding your equipment and capabilities and what's going on and distances and speeds and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
So generally what ends up happening is about 25% of the people that are in the class are like full-time. This is their full-time job. They work at a range, and part of their job is resetting the course and setting up monthly shoots or registered shoots or even some bigger shoots. So that's probably 25% of the students are really work in the industry as capacity of having to work out on the range and set targets, as their full-time job.
Right.
Probably 50% of the class set targets, but not necessarily as their full-time job, meaning they set targets with their own machines. They help out their buddy who works at a range, or they help out the local sportsman's club or the nonprofit club that, shoots on Wednesdays and Sunday mornings, and they got a 5-stand set up or something on some ski and trap fields. So that's probably about 50% of the students are going to do something with machines and setting up something, whether it's for personal use or helping out, but it's not necessarily their full-time job. And then 25% of the people probably never even will set a target. They just are shooters that want to learn more about it and understand, be more engaged in what exactly is happening out there, from the target setting to the operation of the tournament, et cetera. So the class kind of covers A to Z all the way through the target setting to, the flow of the course, et cetera. So the flow of the course isn't necessarily important for some guy setting targets to practice or train or something like that, but it's a very comprehensive class.
And Anthony, do you get a lot of demand for that? I mean, I know you only do it once a year. I mean, does it seem like that's enough? Or
I generally take as many as 10. My brother does it with me, so he helps me. So we've got kind of 2 of us out there, and sometimes we'll split up a little bit, and he'll be talking to a group, and I'll be talking to a group. Mm-hmm. But I almost fill it every year. So I take 10 to 12 at the absolute most, and I generally always have 8 to 12 people in the class.
Okay, gotcha. And then the rest of it is the mental training. How many times do you do that each year?
I had done a class historically. I just did one in December, and then I've got one that's actually coming Sunday. And before that, I hadn't done it since prior to COVID. Just getting people it's a classroom thing, getting all the people indoors and sitting together to listen. I haven't really done it in. This one that I did this past December was the first one I'd done in about 2 years. And I changed the format since then. The format that I'm doing now is it's a little bit longer class, slightly longer class. And I've kind of changed my teaching of it since 2 or 3 years ago. So it's kind of, when you use the topic mental game, it's obviously a broad term, right?
Sure.
Right.
And everybody's interpretation of what that means is different. So what I've tried to do now with it is be very comprehensive to get people really understanding, what is it that we're actually at? Why are you here? So you're kind of here because you think you're missing a part of your game that's not related to your ability to hit the target. It's related to your ability to consistently get the performance that you'd like when it counts, right?
Gotcha.
So that kind of comes a little bit of that becomes kind of the topic of the class. We'll ask some questions, and first thing I always do in the beginning of class, I write everybody's, what do you want to, here's some things that I have on the agenda. What good questions do you have? Right. That is the reason that you're here. We kind of write them all down, and then by the time I get through the whole class, we kind of then go back to the board and look at the questions, and, we've answered most of them, but we'll just kind of reiterate, how we answered that or why the person's question was potentially much more complex than what seems like a simple question. So I do that class right now. I've had it one in December and one in January. Then I'll host it again throughout the season. I just haven't picked the dates yet, but I'll probably do it. Probably do it in the fall. Probably won't do it this spring. I'll probably do it again in the fall.
Okay.
So what about your regular lessons, Anthony? Is that calendar looking to open up soon, or you still got that locked down right now?
No, I have everything opened up. I'm actually probably my whole spring is about booked, and I probably have filled my fall and winter probably about 80%.
Okay.
All right.
Wow. That's incredible.
That keeps you pretty busy throughout the year, sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, I take a little time off in the summer and do some fishing. So I don't schedule much. I don't schedule a whole lot in July or August.
Mm-hmm.
Schedule some of my regulars that come. I have a big base of people that come every 4 weeks to every 8 weeks. So I schedule a few of those folks through the summer just to keep them on the schedule that they like. And then, once I get to like September through June, I pretty much will work 6 or 7 days a week that whole time.
Jeez.
Gotcha. Well, Anthony, since you're up here in the frozen Northeast like we are, let's dive in a little bit to things that shooters can do through the winter, that they can, things they can do to train indoors or maybe not be outside. I know that being outside and training on a real course is ideal, but what are some of the things that other shooters can do when the weather's really nasty that they can work on indoors to help their shooting?
I mean, doing some different types of gun mount, whether, you're practicing, there's a few things within gun mount, if you're practicing something for FITASC, there's obviously different opinions on how you mount a gun, et cetera. So if you're a pre-mounted mainly shooter or pre-mounted in the pocket with your head out, you don't really have anything to practice. So
Gotcha.
Practicing your gun mount is basically irrelevant because you don't have one. I shoot out of my pocket slightly and get the gun down further depending on how much time I have. And then obviously down for FITASC. I don't really practice my mount a lot because I've done it for forever.
Sure.
I practiced that at one point in my game, but I suggest if somebody is learning their gun mount, what I suggest when you're talking about learning your gun mount is figure out exactly how it is that you're mounting the gun, so I'm not going to necessarily get into all the details of that because it's a little bit hard to explain just through hearing it without having somebody there to help you or watch a video or something like that. So you have an example, but figure out what you think is important for you to mount the gun and how that's going to work with your hands moving together in sync or your front hand first or whatever you think is the best style.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. One thing that's really important with a gun mount, just while we're talking about, is head position. So where your head is if you're going to take the shot and your balance point between your feet and where your head is, if you're going to take the shot, your head should basically, and your balance for your feet and your stance should be at that same point before you start mounting. I think that's probably one of the biggest mess ups with mounting. Since we're talking about something that people can do. But then what I suggest that they do is go online and watch videos of the very best people. So like Nick Berry has all kinds of stuff on YouTube that he's posted over the years. He's got hours of footage of really good shooters. What I always say is watch all of that, figure out what they're doing, give yourself some examples, and then video yourself. Set your phone up on the other side of the room on a couple of different angles so you can see what you look like. Gotcha. My suggestion for people is you do not have to look like any one person, but you have to fit within the large group. So if you watch 10 really good shooters that are shooting with the gun out either in a FITASC mount or unmounted slightly. You watch 10 really good shooters and you video yourself and you fit within that 10, then you're probably doing okay. If you have something that sticks out and looks drastically different where you would not classify yourself as fitting in the group, then you got to keep working on it or make an adjustment to whatever the difference is.
Right.
So, Anthony, when someone can get out to a club with limited time due to weather, I mean, what do you recommend they work on? I know that's a very individualistic thing, but how do you recommend, as a broad, someone spend their time?
I'm a firm believer in you need to practice right at your edge of confidence, meaning like the targets that scare you just a little bit where you could miss one, but you feel like you're pretty comfortable hitting the bird. So I'm a firm believer in a lot of people practice birds that are too hard and too easy, meaning they go through the whole course and they shoot the station. If they kill 6 birds or 8 birds, they just move on. If they kill 5 out of 6 at a station, they do a couple more pairs till they hit it, a couple in a row, and then they move on. And then they get to a really hard one, and they, really hard one, they shoot a bunch. Where my suggestion would be skip the really easy one, the one that's really easy to hit 6, and skip the really hard one, the one that you only got 2 out of 6, and spend the majority of your time on the stations that it's easy for you to get 5 out of 6 and 7 out of 8, but it's not easy for you to kill 20 in a row.
Gotcha.
So I think that if you think about what people say, and it's related to our mental game even, people say all the time, well, I got a lot of 5 out of 6s and a lot of 7 out of 8s. Well, a lot of times what that is that bird is right there at your comfort zone where you're not 100% confident, or you have some technical flaw in your game for that bird, and you got 5 out of 6 because that's really what your ability is on that bird. Okay.
Gotcha.
It might not be so much that you just definitely had a mental error. People make the assumption that if you got 5 out of 6, that you should have been able to get 6. Well, I make the assumption sometimes when I watch someone get that 5 out of 6 that they're really lucky they didn't get 4. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
4 out of 6, so that's the station that you need to, that's the type of station that you need to spend the most time on, with a variety of angles and speeds and distances, that type of difficulty, in which the one, the target that one person might, style of target or type of target that one person might lack a little bit of that proficiency and therefore confidence might be different than the next guy. So you would want to cover all the types of shots within that type of target that you feel it's easy for you to get that 5 out of 6, but not always easy for you to get 6 out of 6.
So on that 5 out of 6, Anthony, you think something in that realm, they should be getting 10 out of 10 in practice. Does that make sense?
Probably more.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah, because look, what I always say is this: what makes you think that if you can kill 6 out of 6 in practice, that you can kill 6 out of 6 in competition?
Right.
Because you've added an element of pressure and everything else that might go with that, right?
Right.
Your heart's beating a little bit different. You feel a little bit different. You got a little bit of adrenaline going. So the reality is, you probably, to know with certainty that you can hit 6 out of 6 when it counts, you probably got to be able to hit closer to, 15 out of 15 or 20 out of 20.
Wow.
Gotcha.
So that's the reason why they're on difficulty levels that are too high. Okay. Is because they've already advanced themselves to the next level of difficulty, but they don't have any mastery, by my definition. Right. So it's not a race. You do what you can, so what that means is you might shoot less stations and you master the birds that are a little bit easier. And if you shot less stations that day, but you left those stands with more confidence. And we got to remember too is if you're working to kill 10 out of 10 or 15 out of 15 or 20 out of 20 or whatever it is, what's also going to show up is a technical error. Okay. So a technical error like gun speed being out of sync, just doing something wrong with your mechanics might not show up in 6 targets.
Okay.
I see
and
where you're going with that, yeah.
Your pattern covers large enough area that it hides your mistakes.
Okay.
So, but if your sample set is big enough, the probability catches up with you and it doesn't cover your mistakes.
Okay.
Wow, I've
So you
never.
can realize that they're there.
Yeah, kind of discover if you have a weakness or not there.
Yeah, I've never heard it explained like that. That's awesome.
Well, with me and Jason being fairly new to the sport, we're getting into the whole groove of, hey, this time of year we want to go down south and shoot. And I know a lot of other shooters look forward to going down to Florida and Georgia, Texas, other places like that. The guys that live and shoot down there obviously have the advantage. Do you have any tips or suggestions for us northern shooters before we head down and start, competing in things like the Gator Cup, the Jack Links tournament, the Caribbean Classic, that kind of stuff for us guys up in the cold weather?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's no trick. You have to get out and shoot when you can on a day that's reasonable.
Gotcha.
If you're out there on a day that you don't want to be out there, it's probably not a good idea because you're not really into it. You want to be doing more than just going through the motions.
Right.
So, you pick a good day, you wear some layers, shoot as much as you can when you can, to try to get prepared. I don't shoot a ton this time of year. I've only shot 2 times since the national championship. Both of those times were recently in the last couple of weeks, just trying to get a little bit of rust off before I go to Florida in the middle of February. I don't think there's really any huge tip or thing that you need to do. I'd say when you get there, get some shooting in, practice a little bit when you get there and sign up for as many different preliminaries and stuff like that as you can to get a little bit of, experience back, under your belt in front of you before you get to the main event. So, I mean, I think it's all just, you do the best that you can with the cards that you're dealt, so.
Gotcha.
Bundle up and get out there.
All right. Well, let's change gears a little bit. So we've seen a lot of influx of new shooters to the sport, especially with, I think the SCTP had a record-breaking attendance up here at the Cardinal Center, and also the Nationals down in Texas. I mean, there's a lot more shooters coming in. I think they also broke the record for most first-time attendees at the Nationals. Any ideas why we're seeing this influx of shooters now? I mean, do you think this trend's going to continue?
I mean, there's always growth, it seems like, in clay target shooting. Growth in competitive shooting, I'd say, is not nearly as high as the growth in just regular clay target shooting.
Okay,
it's hard to say. I mean, with COVID, I think we had more people shooting and getting outdoors and trying different outdoor recreation. So we probably get a little bit of a trickle down effect that. Some of those people that started 2 years ago to be slightly more avid are now at a point where they might enter some competitions. I just talked to a gentleman that said he'd been a casual shooter for 30 years. And when the pandemic hit, he started going shooting every week. And, now he's doing tournaments. He just did his 3rd tournament the other day. He wouldn't have got into competitive shooting unless the pandemic hit, because he would have never became more avid.
I mean, do you see that as kind of a natural path? I mean, somebody gets into sporting clays and they go out with their buddies on the weekends, once or twice a month, and they have so much fun that they actually just naturally progress to competitive shooting?
Yeah, it's a very small percentage, though. I would say that if you took I don't know what the percentage would be, but it's probably less than 1%.
Okay.
Of people that shoot recreationally shoot competitively. I could tell you that if I took all the recreational shooters that came through my range in a given year, it's a very, very small number shoot competitively. We market to those people. They're right there see the flyers hanging on the board for the tournaments, et cetera, et cetera. It's just not. You have to be a competitor. That you want to compete. Other people look at it and go, I could shoot in a competition and it costs, $120 for 100 birds. I could just shoot today for 42.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, I guess.
And if the competition part doesn't drive them, then they're not going to do it. So it is fun, and you get out there and you meet people, and there's a lot of entertainment around it, but the person has to make the first step to decide that they're going to get there. So I think that it's just a percentage, it's a fraction. Always, the question that everyone always asks is, what do we need to do to get more people in the sport? Well, we don't really have any problem with people in the sport. There's plenty of people in the sport. We could use more growth in competitive shooting. The example I always give is, do you know anybody that goes bass fishing or goes fishing for perch or crappie or whatever it might be, in your area? People always go, oh yeah, definitely. Friends of mine fish, or friends of mine hunt, or friends of mine, have a hunting dog or whatever. Right.
Yep.
Or friends of mine golf. And how many of your friends that do all those different activities do those activities competitively?
Right.
Right. No, I understand that completely.
There's a lot of people that golf that never been in a golf tournament. There's a lot of people that have a dog that they take hunting. They never entered a dog in a hunt trial. There's people that fish and they never entered a fishing tournament. So
yeah,
I think it's just a percentage, and I don't think that no matter what you do that you change that percentage much.
Gotcha.
There's people that walk in our door and come recreational shooting for the first time, and 3 months later they're in competitions.
Right.
There's people that have walked in our door for 25 years and they've never entered a competition.
Just depends on the person, basically.
Depends on the person.
Gotcha.
So this is a very broad question, Anthony, and I understand you can give me a broad answer, but that's okay. I just want your opinion on this. What's your take on sporting clays as a whole in the United States right now? Do you think we're in a good spot? Do you think we need to change? Do you think we need to improve? What's your take on it?
I mean, the sporting clays in the United States for the industry as a whole, related to people that are coming out to shoot and ranges. I mean, we have the best ranges in the world for sure. We have the most participation in the world. We have the best competitions in the world. I mean, all around, I think the sporting clays is in a really good position. The kicker right now is the ammo.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the availability. Availability was one problem. It's availability and price.
Right.
Price has definitely slowed down the number of targets thrown throughout the country. You're always going to have a range that says we're throwing more than we ever have. That's fine. But White Flyer, it was way off on targets bought in the last half of the year. Way off. Like, double-digit percentages.
Wow.
Okay. So there's less targets going in the air. Now, that might not be all sporting clay related. There's lots of small trap clubs and stuff like that in parts of the country where people actually didn't have any ammo, or there's people reload and they didn't have reloading supplies, so they shot less. But if I use some of the range around like Baltimore, Washington area, they've been on a 2 to 3 box limit per person now for basically a year.
Yeah.
Really?
So if you're on a 2 to 3 box limit for a year, and some days they don't have any ammo, those clubs down there have probably thrown 500,000 less targets alone between those two clubs because of that.
Yeesh.
So that's really our kicker right now. I just talked to a guy who shoots competitively. He's been shooting for a long time. He can afford to do it. He just said, "Hey man, I've been shooting maybe once a week now." He goes, "I used to shoot 3 cases a week." He goes, "But just price of everything's up, and I'm just cutting back a little bit."
Yeah.
So he used to be able to buy shells cheap at wherever he could find them, and we sold shells in bulk a year and a half ago. We were selling shells in bulk at our door when you walked in. If you want to buy 10 cases for $59 a case,
Right.
year and a half. So the cheapest shell we can sell you right now is $89. So it's $30 more a case, and a lot of guys are shooting a case for practice when they're serious. It's $30 more just for the ammo. But everything else has went up also. The target cost, White Flyer just had a target cost increase because all commodity prices are up, and that's like maybe the third price increase in the last year. So, you're going to see prices go up a little bit more, just like you're seeing prices go up a little bit more in the whole rest of the economy with everything.
Right.
So I think that's our hurdle right now is, what does that mean for our next year? Which we don't necessarily know. I think we had a really good wave through COVID and still has been pretty good, but I think we're at a point where the price matters,
Yeah.
Gotcha. So you think in your heart that it's probably never going to go back to that way again, or the prices are up and they're going to stay up forever?
I mean, I'm a firm believer in, free markets in the economy. So, the supply and demand should dictate prices, so
Sure.
If there's enough supply, prices are going to come down. It's just for sure. But the problem is if the raw materials are high because of inflation, everything else is higher, to produce the shell, then the manufacturers are never going to sell it for $50 again until those raw materials come down. If raw materials come down, then somebody's going to have capacity, meaning that their machines are sitting there not operating, and they're going to lower their prices.
Right.
And when they lower their prices, they're going to start getting sales, and somebody else is going to have their ammo sitting in their warehouse, so they're going to lower their prices also. But that doesn't happen until there's enough supply of raw materials that the supply of raw materials goes down. At that point, from to get down low enough, we're at some downturn in the economy because the prices of the raw materials aren't going to come down until the economy turns direction. The economy turns directions a little bit.
Well, it's not just ammo. I mean, go buy a 2x4 or a hunk of angle iron.
Yeah.
Everything.
Groceries, everything.
If we get enough supply, they'll come down, but you're going to have raw materials come down.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I want to circle back to a coaching specific question, and hopefully I'll let you give this some thought. I think it was you that said this, so don't crucify me if you didn't, but I believe you said we were talking one time, or maybe you were talking to a group of people, and you said, again, I think it was you, that it's easier to take a person to coach them, somebody that's regularly breaking targets in the 60s range on a tournament, and taking them up to start shooting in the low 80s versus taking someone that's shooting in the 80s and have them shoot in the 90s. Why do you think that is, and what specific challenges must shooters overcome at that level?
So I think if the person has got a little bit of experience and they're shooting in the 60s and they haven't had a ton of coaching, then there's a lot of low-hanging fruit, meaning, shots that are easy to add to their card because they simply aren't educated. They aren't educated enough to know when to do what and what decisions to make and how to set up and how to have the right technique and how to take their technique that you teach them and go practice it. So you can get a very quick learning curve kind of going from the person shot enough shells to be able to handle the gun, et cetera, and be comfortable. Just don't necessarily really know the strategies and techniques that are required to break different targets. So that's pretty easy to teach that person, getting them out from that 60 to 80 range. Obviously the difficulty level of the course, matters on those numbers, but as a general idea, when you get in that 80, 85 range, there's a couple things happen. Number one is you got less targets to make up. to get to a 90, right? So you're saying, all right, I got to figure out how to hit 10 more birds or 5 more birds. 5 to 10 more birds are going to change my game. I'll be at a different level. Well, you're trying to find 5 or 10 birds out of 100, right?
Right.
So, and those 5 or 10 birds aren't necessarily always disappearing off their scorecard for the same reason. So, they could have missed 5 to 10 birds that they should have had this today because, the course had a lot of trap and quartering birds and they didn't know how to set up for that correctly.
Okay.
How to get the good hold points and all the things that are important for those shots. So if you fix all that and then it shows up, they missed 5 birds the next time that they should have, but it might not have been for that reason. So you're looking for a small number of targets, but you've got a lot of things that you have to do at a higher skill level to get those. So really what happens when you change, what I always tell to people is what I'm going to teach you as you move up the board never really changes. I'm not going to teach a guy that's shooting 85 really that much different from the guy that's shooting 65 in terms of ideas. What I need you to be able to do though, or what is required for you to shoot better and better is you have to be able to execute those ideas with a higher level of proficiency and basically be able to do that. You have to be able to do that more consistently. Obviously, it's like the difference between how long is it going to take you to sand a piece of wood to where it's not going to give you a splinter versus sand a piece of wood so they can finish it as a piece of furniture.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It's the same process. It just takes more time and refinement. You're more refined, so the big ideas, okay, when you get to that point, the big ideas you already know the big ideas, right? You've already gotten rid of you've already picked all the low hanging fruit. Now you've got to get your ladder and try to get to the top of the tree. Takes more time to get up there. Okay. It's not as easy, so that's the difference. Is that you're trying to strive and push yourself both understanding wise, refinement wise, and time to get out there and do that and work on that and practice that, etc.
Gotcha. Well, as a target setter, so, when a person goes to a tournament, is there a percentage, by what I mean by that is there a percentage of targets that are set that are specifically geared towards AA or master class shooters? Is there a number involved because those seem to be the ones that always catch me and Jason up. It's the weird ones, the ones we haven't seen before, or the ones that, maybe we just don't have a good read on it. As a target setter, when you go in to set a course, what percentage of targets do you really want to push people with?
I like to set, this varies from target setter to target setter.
Sure.
I don't like to set a lot of extreme targets. I like to set a lot of intermediate targets. I don't set a lot of real easy targets, but I will set a couple real easy ones generally just to be stations or targets that get added right to someone's scorecard. At any class, the guy in E class should hit these 30 birds, because they're pretty basic, or these 20 birds because they're pretty basic. And then he's got to hit the rest of the, some percentage out of the next 80 to feel comfortable with his score. So I don't really think there's any number, et cetera, but you're going to get a few difficult birds when you talk about somebody that you're saying, well, geez, there was a couple of birds that really beat me up. I wonder if they were harder. Well, of course they probably were. But from the shooter's perspective, it probably means that it's something that you hadn't seen before, or was unique, or you didn't know how to read that bird properly to understand what it was actually doing. So it could be lack of experience, which is definitely part of it for lots of people. It could be lack of reading the bird, and those two kind of go together, right?
Right.
So
absolutely.
if you're very experienced, you're better at reading the bird. you're less experienced, you're not as good at reading the bird. So you kind of get a double whammy on that one, right?
Right.
Which can magnify somebody missing some shots on a given course on a given day, depending on what they have set up for you.
How many times have you seen masterclass guys miss those 30 birds that you set for the E-class guys?
Well, they miss some. There's a lot of them that miss some percentage of them. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't really afford to give away any of the easy ones. At any level, really.
Anthony, if you don't mind, and if you don't want to talk about this, we don't have to. But you're shooting internationals. I followed you pretty closely, and you had trouble with a station that I think kind of took you out of contention. There's always a lesson with a mistake, whether it's for ourselves or from somebody else. We find you at the pinnacle of the sport. So can you tell us what happened? Can you tell us what you can learn or what people can learn from that?
Yeah, I mean, I had 3 stations that weren't very good, to be honest with you. I had station, there was a left to right crosser on the green course. It would have been, I guess, station 3. Yes. I missed that a couple of times, and then missed the Rabu that was with it, kind of as a result of the missing the crosser. That was my second station of the whole tournament. I got it back together on that course and shot the rest of it okay. And then on the yellow course, my last station was a left to right tower, and I had a single, and I hit the single. Then I missed 5 out of 6 of this left to right tower. Had a midi and a standard, so I shot a 65, I think, on that course, and I missed 5 on my second to last stand. So that would have, I would have still been in the running.
That was I think that was station 10, wasn't it, on the yellow course? The big tower?
Station 10.
Yeah.
And then station 10 on the orange had a left to right tower, and I missed 4 or 5 there too.
Wow, man. Those were...
So the one on yellow is probably a combination between. I looked at it. I was fairly confident, and then we had a giant backup, and we had this giant backup. I was talking to somebody, and actually talking to somebody about something business related, and and the next thing I know, we were up, and I was the first shooter, and I wasn't as prepared as I should have been for the station, so I can't rule that out as part of my problem.
Yeah.
And then the one on orange was it was a left to right, but now it's 2 days later, and I got a left to right tower again. And, so now it's partly in my head, just doubting myself a little bit. But I did a little bit of shooting the last couple of weeks. I shot 2 times, and I think on some of my left to right, somewhere along the line, I was getting a little bit out of balance and out of just having my stance or my rotation of moving my body out of whack a little bit. And I'm not convinced that is not part of the problem, So I shot some left to right towers last week or 10 days ago, and I shot them fine, but I just kind of went through it like what could have went wrong there.
Right.
And I definitely think it could have been lack of planning, so an overconfidence to start turns into a plan that is a little bit vague, because I looked at the birds and knew I could hit them, and then started talking whatever and wasn't quite paying attention because I was in the middle of a conversation. And then all of a sudden we're up. Right. So, kind of started with the overconfidence that could have turned into actual lack of planning. And I think that's definitely part of it. And then, maybe a little bit with my body and my rotation, just kind of feel like as I would swing left, I feel like a left to right shot is harder for most right-handed shooters for their body. Okay. Like moving their, people will dip their right shoulder and stuff like that, so I feel like as I swung left to right, I potentially wasn't moving my body as a whole. Okay. That I was using my upper body maybe a little too much.
Right.
could have got me offline or something like that. Like drop my right shoulder as I swing left to right, not using my body enough. That could have been part of it.
Gotcha.
From what I felt when I did a little practice.
You know, for us mere mortals, we talk a lot about confidence and how that plays a big factor, you know, self-image. Do you think, and this is a question I just developed by something you just said, was overconfidence. Do you think there's a lot of mistakes made by guys at the very top of the game because of overconfidence?
I don't think there's a lot of mistakes, but I think that there's a few. I think that there is a few misses that the person would say, "Man, I missed a real easy one," type of thing. I should have never missed that type of shot. Yeah, I think there's a few like that. If somebody's, even if they're really on their game, et cetera, because things are going so well that they just let up for a second. They let up a little too much when they needed to keep kind of doing the same thing. So I wouldn't say that there's a lot of mistakes, but there's probably a few here and there. Everybody's missed an easy one that they went, "Man, I should have never missed that. I just didn't look at the bird, or I shot it too fast, or didn't take enough time, or something like that." So
right.
Not a lot of mistakes, but some.
Yeah. Well, I think we're all guilty of that to some degree or another. I mean, even me and Jason, you look at a particular target. It's like, man, I broke that 1,000 times.
Right.
And you don't give it the due respect that it needs. I mean, it's really hard to kind of stay in that zone.
Or the planning.
Yeah, the planning, station after you look at it and you don't really take it as seriously as you should. And that's usually when a mistake comes up. You got to do the same thing from start to finish, from your plan all the way through into your routine, regardless the difficulty level of the bird. Gotcha. Well, I was going to ask you, Anthony, you want to talk about the squad changes, Jason?
Yeah.
Okay. There's some rumblings about the squad changes for the final day of the Nationals. If we understand correctly, you're a big proponent of this. Can you explain what all that would entail?
All the details, we talked about a little bit at the advisory council meeting and delegates meeting that happened at the national championship. So the details are going to be very specific, and they're going to be made public soon. I'm on the executive council, so the group of, I think there's 13 or maybe 15 of us on there. The group has kind of went through some ideas to come up with a list of how we would get some form of a criteria, so to speak, to select people that is purely based on a criteria. And no, I think this guy's a good shooter. I think he's a great shooter. So that way there's no favoritism, et cetera. And coming up with an idea to put those people together at the national championship for fairness. So it'll be public. It's going to get released out, and all the details will be there. So I'm not going to get into any details of talking about this and that, because it's not really public yet.
Okay.
In terms of what exactly all those details are, but something is definitely coming. I think it'll be interesting. It was kind of an idea that I threw out, and then the council adopted it to say, all right, let's do something to let's act on this, right? Take it from an idea that's been there on the table for different councils for many years, for a long time, and it's kind of just never went anywhere.
So is this, I mean, I know you can't give details, but this is kind of like a super squad final day. Is that kind of like what you're talking about?
It would be the whole championship. Whole. Yep.
Wow. Let me ask this. This is something that I've kind of grumbled about here and there, and I'd like to hear your take on it. Any other sport has a point series. With our sport, you show up, you shoot better on those 4 days than anybody else, and you're the national champion. Any other sport has a point series. It's based on how you shot at the regionals, how you shot the U.S. Open, on and on and on. Do you think that's something that our sport should lean towards? Do you think that's something we need, is a point series? Or do you think it's
right now, I mean, there's a lot of different point series. races and stuff that the NSCA has. We have the All-American team, which is just raw points based upon as many wins as you can get, regardless of how many competitions you shoot.
Right.
So that's one point system. There's a point system for the Team USA's sporting and FITASC teams, which take into account all the big regional US Opens, nationals, that give us kind of a ranking at the end of the year of how everybody did on those shoots. And then the championship tour has a points system, which is also different, that picks the tour champion, which is all the regionals, the US Open, the national championship. So we have enough different point systems that you can look at and recognize, the All-American team is the guy who got the most points, regardless of how much participation. So if he participates a lot, he's more likely to get it. Then you got the teams, then you got the championship tour. So there's a lot of points out there, points races out there, et cetera. The national championship, if you look at most sports, they have some title that is picked, in one championship, right? So you can lead the league in a lot of sports, but that doesn't mean you're going to, in whatever disciplines, but that doesn't mean your team's going to win the World Series. If you're, you might lose, even though you had a better record going into it.
Right.
Gotcha. One more quick question, Anthony, and I'm going to let Jason get to the rapid fire questions. And this is just a personal opinion of yours. We've gotten away from Calcuttas, okay? But Jason and I went to the AFS Invitational, and we actually got to participate in the first Calcutta that we've ever done, because we've only been in the sport since 2017. It was a lot of fun, very entertaining. Everybody was laughing and joking and having a good time about it. Why do you think the sport's gotten away from Calcuttas, and do you think we're missing out on a lot of fun and a lot of good time by not having them?
I mean, I don't necessarily think we've gotten away from it. I mean, I've been shooting competition, shot my first competition in 1995. I've seen very few Calcuttas ever, except for something like on some make breaks here and there. So I don't think we ever really had any following of a Calcutta, et cetera. I mean, in one scenario, in a lot of states, it's illegal. Okay. If you actually look into it. Now, are they coming to look for some guys, making some bets on a make or break? Probably not. Okay.
All right.
But nonetheless, in a lot of states, it's not legal. Some state laws are written actually to where options are not even legal.
Wow. I didn't know that.
So, I mean, I think that, yeah, it's fun, it's entertaining, et cetera. But, I'm not sure exactly the place that it has and what do we do with it. I mean, I think someone could start an online, you wouldn't have to even do it at a tournament. Someone could do it every time that there's a major tournament.
Sure.
Someone could have an online, you go on there and place wagers, and there'd probably be plenty of betting going on. And
some guy listening
easy
to this
enough to do.
Yeah. Some guy listening to this is going to make thousands of dollars off an app somewhere.
Right.
But, Anthony, we do this thing called rapid fire questions we do with all the shooters, and I'm sure you've heard it. You want to do it with us real quick?
Sure.
All right. So first question is your gun.
Beretta DT11 32-inch barrels.
Ported or unported?
Ported.
Choked or fixed choke?
Briley custom chokes.
Do you have a go-to constriction, or do you change pretty often?
20,000s or skeet.
Wow. Custom stock?
Yes.
Okay. Vest or shell bag?
Vest.
Brand?
Castellani.
And glasses?
Pila.
Hearing protection?
Foam plugs.
What shells do you run?
I use Winchester AA 1 ounce 1290. Shoot both 7.5s and 8s.
Oh, do you really? Really? So you
Yep.
switch between the two? Awesome.
Is there any criteria why you switch between 7.5 and 8s? Is it particular targets or?
In FITASC, I shoot all 7.5s just to keep it simple.
Mm-hmm.
And in sporting, I shoot majority 8s, and I shoot 7.5s on something just pretty far, edgy, long rabbit. Just, I'll shoot a lot of 8s in practice just to be comfortable with what I can shoot. I wouldn't be uncomfortable in almost any tournament, any range, whether it's FITASC or sporting, shooting all 8s. So I think that you got a few more pellets or a lot more pellets. It's just a trade-off.
Yeah, sure. Well, that's about all I got, Jason. You got anything else you want to ask?
I'm hoping he keeps talking.
Anthony, any of your sponsors you want to give a shout out to or thank?
Yeah. All my sponsors, I have Beretta, Winchester, Pila, Jim Greenwood Custom Stocks, Castellani, Ultimate Shooting Accessories, White Flyer, Laporte. I think that's everybody.
Anthony,
Riley.
If somebody wants to try and get on your, and it's about playing like craps, but if somebody wants to try and get on for lessons, what's your website? Tell them how they can find you.
Yeah, the best thing you can do, my email address is right on my website. It's Anthony@clayshootinginstruction.com. So Anthony@clayshootinginstruction.com, or go on my website, clayshootinginstruction.com. Send me an email. Super responsive to emails. I'll message you right away and say, hey, I've got your name down. Send you some dates as I'm working on them or when they open, or, people often say, man, I tried to get a lesson with you. I couldn't get one. I'll always book you. Sometimes you got to wait, so,
right.
If you're calling saying you want to come next month, then you're probably not going to get in.
Is there any big shoots coming up at M&M, Anthony, you want to talk about?
We got the big seafood blast in April. That's a big one. And then we've got some of our yearly shoots that we have, but the biggest one we'll have this year is the big seafood blast and Beretta Cup, and that's in April, end of April.
And you're on WinScore or Score Chaser?
We're on WinScore.
You're on WinScore. Okay, cool.
Yeah, Jason and I are definitely have to make it up to that one day.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to be there before you because I'm going to go take a lesson. So
okay. Well,
Anthony doesn't know it yet.
Not unless I get there first.
Well, Anthony, thank you very much, man. I know how busy you are, and we really appreciate the time. Is there any closing thoughts, anything you want to add?
No, man, I'm good. It's good being on with you guys, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, we appreciate it, Anthony. Thank you so much for spending your time with us.
Have a good evening, bud.
Take care.
All right, take care. Bye-bye. All right, man. That was definitely a smackdown from hell. I mean, that was just great. I love hearing Anthony. I could sit there and listen to him all day.
Like brain meltdown.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. But we now have to move on to a couple segments coming your way, and then we'll wrap up here shortly.
All right, on the phone with us is Chris McAfee. Chris, we talked to you once before on a bear pelt segment. How you been, man?
Doing good, man. Doing good.
Well,
trying to stay warm here in Texas, which hadn't been difficult this year.
Yeah, I'm jealous. We're up here. We're up here in the frozen conundrum of Ohio. So
right.
But hey, Chris, for those that didn't catch you on the bear pelt segment, remind everybody again where you're from and what class you shoot.
Yeah, so Chris McAfee. I'm just outside of Dallas, Texas, a little city called Roy City, Texas, about 30 miles east of Dallas. I've been in master class since 2018.
Awesome. So we're talking about OtoPro Technologies here. I think you said, have one of Grace's older sets, one of her first sets. Is that correct?
Yes, the battery operated set. I've had them since 2019, I believe, is when I ordered those.
Gotcha. And you came from foam twisties, or?
Yeah, just the regular molded foam earplugs. I'm not sure which ones you call them. Everybody makes some different shoots or wherever you go to.
Gotcha. Well, Chris, what made you jump to an electronic ear over just the standard molded or foam earplugs?
Well, there's several things. I mean, the first thing was obviously my hearing. I've done a lot of hunting and different shooting over the years, and probably didn't do the best that I could with my hearing. And then meeting Grace, I met Grace at the regional championship in 2019, South Central Regional at Providence Hill. And the fact that she was a doctor and had a great conversation with her. Was not ready to make the decision yet on which set I wanted, but I did go ahead and get my molds done, which if anybody's listening to this, if you do catch Grace somewhere, you don't want to spend the money right then, at least have her do your molds, and you can always order later. but I just wanted a higher quality product. I wanted to be able to sit in the behind a station, have a conversation with one of my squad mates that I shoot with all the time. We're talking about targets or whatever, and I'm not yelling from person to person.
Yeah.
And you're interrupting the person in front of you. But so if you've got two people that have those earplugs that are electronic, you can have a normal conversation and not interrupt anyone.
Yeah, that's a great thing.
The comfortability is unbelievable. I wear these things half the time. I forget that I've got them in. So I'll be in the clubhouse and realize, oh, heck, I got my earplugs still in. And one of the big advantages that I use them for, I mean, obviously you have volume control in this. You can turn them off if you don't want the sound, if you want to go to dead or whatever. But I use them a lot, especially when we have blind traps. I'm into the whole move on the flash. If I can't see that trap, that's kind of an issue for me. Mm-hmm. But if I can hear it, I know when it's coming. So when I turn my earplug all the way up, if I've got a trap sitting off to my right that's blind, I can turn that earplug up, and I know when it goes off. If there's any kind of delay or anything, I'm not moving before the target leaves the machine.
Yeah,
because I know when it left the machine.
That's a good thought there. I never really actually thought about that.
I've picked up on that since we've gotten ours. I was really worried, and I told Grace this. I was really worried about picking up too much noise. But you learn to love it because now you can hear that trap go off. Mm-hmm. And like he said, a blind trap, you know when it's coming now.
Absolutely. And no matter what earplugs you wear, you cannot drown out the noise. You've got to get that built into your pre-shot, post-shot routines that you're going to hear things. And I think as you get used to these and wearing electronic earplugs, you're still hearing the same things you heard before. It may not be quite as loud, maybe a little louder than what it is, but you still have that noise. You still have to get through that mentally, regardless of what earplugs. You can't drown out all the noise.
Right.
No matter what.
Exactly. So what would you say is your I mean, I know you've touched on a lot of things. I mean, if you had to pick one favorite feature on those ears, what would it be?
It would be the ability to control the volume, to be able to control what I hear, what I don't hear. Mm-hmm. That's the biggest feature. And then, as far as Grace goes as a whole, the whole OtoPro line, she has the ability to make decisions on what the best product is. I mean, she has a doctorate in audiology. You can't beat that when it comes to someone that's doing your earplugs.
I agree.
I mean, she in the service you get. I'll use this as an example. This just happened about a month and a half ago here at our club. We have a clubhouse that has a cement floor. This painted cement floors. I took my earplug out, just done it a million times, and dropped it straight on the ground and shattered it.
Oh man.
Yeah, bad feeling, but it happens. I literally sent Grace a text while I was sitting there at the table, turning my cards in. And within 5 minutes, she said, I'll have you a shipping label on Monday. Send me the shipping label. I printed it out, send it back to the factory. And by Wednesday, I have my earplug back.
Wow.
You can't get that kind of service. I didn't talk to anybody in customer service. I talked to Grace and Grace alone, and it was handled.
That was amazing. That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. Man.
Yes, for sure.
Well, definitely speaks well on Grace. She definitely knows her stuff. Like you said, being an audiologist and all that, it's great to hear that she has that kind of customer service too. That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's how she separates herself from anyone else. First of all, she has the knowledge because she's got a doctorate in this, but also she's a very good people person and very highly regarded in the customer service arena. So you're not going to beat that. It's just like having a concierge service for your hearing devices.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, is there anything you would say to someone that's maybe on the fence, man, these things are expensive and I've been getting by for years with my phone twisties or whatever. What would you say to someone that's on the fence? They really want to try them. They just don't know if they want to spend the money. What's your thoughts on that?
Look, there's a lot of things in this game that are expensive. And I think we all agree.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
at this point, you can buy a set of these for 10 cases of shills. But, if you're going to invest in something, invest in your health.
Right.
I'm not saying that your gun is not very important, but at some point, if you keep doing this, and we all shoot 15 to 20,000 rounds a year, and that's a lot on your ears.
Yes.
Just make the investment of $1,500. I mean, if you look at that in the big scheme of things, and then 20 years down the road, when you're not having to wear hearing aids all the time, make the investment. That's the biggest thing I would say.
I agree.
That's good advice. Well,
Chris, thank you. for coming on with us again and spending a few minutes. We really appreciate this. I think you really brought out a lot of great points about Grace and the OtoPro company. We look forward to seeing you out there on the battlefield, if you will.
Yeah, I look forward to meeting you guys in person.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll be around.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. But hey, I appreciate what you guys are doing too with the podcast. This is great.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Well, hey, bud, go get them. Go practice some more. And don't forget, take somebody new shooting, Chris.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
All right.
See you, bud.
See you, Chris.
See you guys.
Jason Rambo, was that not an honor and a privilege to have Anthony on by himself to give us knowledge?
Beyond knowledge.
Well, beyond knowledge. I mean, experience.
This is like Obi-Wan Kenobi of sporting class.
yeah, he's laying the Jedi smackdown on us. That's what he was doing.
Right.
That guy's great. I love Anthony. He's a fantastic
Anthony's,
shooter.
Yes, absolutely. He's not only a fantastic shooter, he's a super cool guy, too.
Yeah, and he knows his stuff. I mean, he's been in the sport a long time. Since he's been shooting since he was a younger guy, and he's picked up and learned so much along the way.
Yes, but listen, let's not discredit the coaches that we have involved with this show.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I mean, we're talking Brad Kidd, Corey Cruz, Kevin DeMichael, Chad Roberts.
And these guys, too, in their own way, are experts in the subject matter. They've all had different experiences, and they all have valid opinions and information to share with everybody.
Yeah. I mean, John Woolley, he's a legend in the sport.
Yeah.
David Radulovich.
You guys take advantage. Get those questions in. Ask them questions, and we'll get one of these guys to answer them for you.
Absolutely. In the meantime, thank you very much to Bear Pelt, Atlas Traps, OtoPro, Negrini, Rhino Chokes, RE Ranger, Game Board US, KO Ammo, and White Flyer. Thank you very much for supporting us.
Right. And don't forget to visit our YouTube page. Keep those questions coming in. Take somebody shooting. Go to a tournament. Introduce new people to the sport.
Yes. And until next week,
we will see you back here on the Dead Pair Podcast.